This is Bloomberg Business of Sports.
The cold, hard truth about the Olympic journey is not really been financially incentivized in the same way that many other professional sports are.
The business of basketball involves CBA, Global, our licensing arm, Think 450. All of those things will make up what that looks like.
Money in sports. It's one of the reasons why I enjoy being on Monday Night Countdown and talk about some of the more interesting aspects of business of sports.
When you're talking sports, discipline is the bridge from being good to ultimately being great at whatever it is that you're trying to be or accomplish at your profession.
Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports show where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr.
And I'm Mike Lynch.
Scarlet will not be joining us today, at least for the chat, but you'll hear her later in the show during an interview with one of our guests. Coming up today, we're excited to have 13-time MLB All-Star Ken Griffey Jr. talk about the 75th anniversary of Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier with our very own Scarlet and Mike Lynch.
He didn't do what he did. Who's going to be the next Jackie Robinson, we don't know, or if it ever happened.
I was not able to be there for the interview, and we'll explain why later, but I'm very excited to listen. That's straight ahead on the Bloomberg Business of Sports show. But first, let's get to some of the topics and some of the big stories of the week. Let's start with Clayton Kershaw. He was perfect through 7 innings for the Dodgers, and then he got pulled. And I know people are like, but he was perfect. Why would you do? I get exactly why they did it. Now, remember, he's coming off of an injury-prone season, and he threw 7 perfect innings. Lynchy, Dodgers won, by the way. They shut out Minnesota. But I get exactly why he was yanked.
I understand, and Kershaw knew going in he was only going to throw 80 to 85 pitches. He missed the postseason last year. He hadn't thrown more than 75 pitches in any simulated game for the Dodgers. Now, that's the Dodgers' point of view. I'm not happy about it, Michael Barr.
Uh-oh.
I am not happy about it at all. Major League Baseball has played more than 220,000 games since baseball started, and there have only been 23 perfect games. There hasn't been one in 10 years since King Felix Hernandez did it for the Seattle Mariners.
Should have been 24, but I'm not going to get into why I'm saying.
Yeah, in Detroit, you're home.
That's the Armando Galarraga saga, but I'm sorry. I went off path here. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, but you're right. But, baseball needs something to bring fans back. And the drama of a no-hitter is something really, really special. But the drama of a perfect game is beyond belief. And this would just be gone. This would have gone viral, the final out, if it happened. And let him come out for the next inning. If he walks somebody gets on an error or is a hit, you yank him out of the game. But I wanted to see him finish this game. I wanted to see him chase baseball history. And if I'm a fan, I'm not happy about it at all.
So let me play Captain Devil's Advocate here. He did have an injury from the previous season. And as you mentioned, he missed the post from last season. They're trying to protect that arm because this is obviously a young season now. So we want to make sure that Kershaw goes on for the rest of the season. And I get it. I mean, it's like, hey, I want to see this. But you know what? It has already done what it's supposed to for baseball because we're talking about it right now, Lynchy.
Yeah, but it just would have been so. I mean, you're playing Little League, you're playing T-ball, you're a baseball fan. Hey, I'm going to be Clayton Kershaw. I threw a perfect game. What's a perfect game, Mom and Dad? Well, a perfect game was when nobody. It would open up a whole new conversation, a whole new discussion. I just want to see good things happen to baseball. I don't want great dramatic moments to be obstructed because somebody's going with a pitch count. And I blame Tony La Russa, who started this back in the 1980s. These stupid pitch counts. I just don't like it at all. I go back to Warren Spahn and Juan Marichal both through 16 innings complete game in a 1-0 game back in the 1960s. They didn't even have pitch counts, but it was estimated they each threw more than 160 pitches in the game. I don't know. These guys are they're just so pampered. I mean, this is history. This is history. If have him miss the next start if he has to.
Well, are we ever going to see a perfect game again? Because of the pitch count.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And this wasn't a high pitch count either. This is 80 pitches. He knew he wasn't going to throw 100. He knew he was going to throw 80 to 85. So he knew he was coming out. And who knew that he was going to have a perfect game going in? It was cold, 36 degrees at game time. The game was played in Minneapolis, outdoors. I understand all that. I understand the Dodgers being protective. But, Sometimes, every once in a while, you just got to do what's best for the game of baseball.
And you ask out there in Radio Land, well, why are we talking about this on the business of sports? Where's the business angle in this? Simply because we're talking about it. And that generates interest, which generates revenue, not only for the Dodgers, but everybody wins if you are a major league team and you're a fan going out there looking at your pitcher, wondering, hey, I wonder if so-and-so is going to pitch this perfect game. But I'm willing to bet that Kershaw jerseys have been selling like hotcakes.
I'm sure they are. And that was one of the big things. Last year, Major League Baseball set a record with merchandise. It was up over 50% last year. That was last year. And didn't even have full capacity for the entire season. So you can imagine what it's going to be this year with full capacity, 162-game schedule.
Speaking of baseball, we have valuations out for the 2021 season, heading now into this year. Which team is valued the most? Which franchise is worth $7 billion plus? Gee, I don't know, Lynchy. Please inform me.
Dun, 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 dun. Start spreading the news, Michael Barr.
Man, the Yankees, I mean, that's why, people say, well, why do you always talk about the Yankees? And when we're giving a sports score, if you notice, the Yankees will come first before the Mets if you're in New York. And Mets fans get all mad about that. But this is why. Because the Yankees, a $7 billion franchise, I mean, my goodness. The Red Sox, they came in second at over $5 billion. That's nearly $2 billion ahead for the Yankees. But, man, I guess part of it, Lynchy, is because, you have the stake also in the Yes Network.
That's a big part of it. What's so incredible to believe about this is that 2 years ago, during COVID, there was a 60-game schedule, no fans. Last year, it was limited capacity probably until July or August for most stadiums. They weren't allowed to have 100% capacity. Yet, they still had to pay 100% of the salaries to the players. And yet, the average price for all the 30 franchises went up over 5%. It's hard to believe that can actually happen when people weren't able to show up at the ballpark. The Yankees right now are worth more than the Dallas Cowboys. They're worth more than the New York Knicks. They're worth more than the Golden State Warriors.
Mm-hmm. And they're not just by a little bit over the Cowboys. Cowboys are valued at $6.92 billion. But what did Jerry Jones get that team for? It was like pennies on the dollar. I mean, my goodness. And just the New York Knicks, they're at $6.12 billion. Golden State Warriors at $6.03 billion. And since we're talking about the NBA, let's talk about now when we're in the NBA playoffs. What happens now to Gregg Popovich, because the Spurs now are out of the playoffs. They lost their play-in game chance to the Pelicans. Is Popovich coming back?
The guy to me seems like a lifer. He's going to be there until he probably draws his last breath. I think basketball is his oxygen. And, I feel bad for these teams that lose in the play-in games and their seasons are over. But the Spurs did finish, if there were no play-in game at all, the Spurs did finish 8 games out of 8th place. So they were one of the teams that benefited from the play-in game, actually having a chance to get into the playoffs. In the Eastern Conference, there's a whole bunch of teams that are with it seeds 7, 8, 9, and 10 within one game of each other. But in the Western Conference, there's a big spread. So I don't feel so bad for Gregg Popovich as I do for teams that probably should have had a one-game playoff to see who got if we didn't have this play-in format.
He's been the head coach of the Spurs for 26 seasons, and he's 73. Now, I'm not saying, that's super-duper old or anything, but let's think about it. Let me put it in perspective. There has been chatter, can we get Phil Jackson to come to the Los Angeles Lakers again? Now, Phil is also in his 70s, about the same age, and I don't see Phil coming back at all because he wants to enjoy his retirement. So, like you said, though, but Popovich, he does seem like a lifer.
He does to me. I mean, basketball is just in his blood, and I just can't imagine him, waking up every day and not being able to go to the gym, not being able to get on a bus, a plane, hotel room, coach a game. Winning is obviously the ultimate goal here, but he's one of those great coaches that's a teacher as well. And his tree of assistant coaches that he's brought in that have gone on and had success other places really is remarkable. And I think that's something that fuels him and drives him.
And that's one of those things also with Popovich. He is so affiliated with the team that people know the Spurs, they know Popovich, and it's a familiarity where that's why people come to the court to see it, and there's a lot of money involved in that. I wonder what happens now if Popovich says, no, I'm not going to come back, and a new guy comes in. Will the revenue from ticket sales go down?
To be determined. How's that?
Yeah.
To be determined. And one final note on money before I just want to jump back to the Yankees because our crack research department at Bloomberg Business of Sports just handed me a note that George Steinbrenner bought the New York Yankees in 1973 for $8.8 million.
Oh, Lordy. You can't even get M&Ms now for that price, man. By the way, now, Charlotte, the Hornets, they're out also. They got knocked out of the play-in game tournament, if you want to call it that. But this was it was, you kind of feel bad for Charlotte. Miles Bridges, he got ejected from the game. Well, no, you can't throw your mouthpiece and hit a young fan in the stands. Come on, man. What's up with that? But Charlotte, I think the team had to walk to the arena because a train held them up, and so they had to walk to the arena. They're already in a bad mood, and then this happens, and then you get blown out 132-103 to Atlanta. I mean, come on, man. What happened here, Lynchy?
They should have just quit while they were behind. We're going to walk to the arena. We might as well just find a bus and get the heck out of here.
The turning point was when they parked the bus, and that was it, man. It was, boy, you feel bad for that. But, I tell you what, the play-in tournaments, and now we're full bore now into the NBA playoffs. There's a lot of money in that, Lynchy.
There is. And the motive here is finish higher than seventh, finish in the top six, and you don't have to worry about the playoffs. So I kind of like it. It puts a little bit of pressure and it adds a little bit of that March Madness into it. You got to win or go home.
Scarlet and Lynchy got the chance to speak with 13-time MLB All-Star and Hall of Famer Ken Griffey Jr. Now, unfortunately, I could not be a part of this interview, and I'm going to do a little bit about how the sausage is made and why I was supposed to be part of it. But this interview was taped on Tuesday. And as we all know, that's the exact same day when all of a sudden a gunman on a Brooklyn subway started shooting up the train, and people injured. Thank God right now nobody has died. But all of a sudden, as a news guy, it was all hands on deck. And I was part of that because obviously I wanted to talk about Jackie Robinson Day with Ken Griffey Jr. So that's why I couldn't be part of that interview. But, Lynchy, I just want to know, how was it speaking with one of the best hitters of all time?
This really was a great interview. It started off very slowly. He was very measured in everything he was talking about. Sometimes I didn't know if he had finished his comments, and Scarlet and I were ready to jump in with the next question, and then he would continue. And he really talked about a myriad of subjects, which really were fascinating, about him playing and homering in the same game with his dad back in 1990, the opportunities that he had and his dad had because of Jackie Robinson. One of the most important things since this weekend is the 75th anniversary of Jackie Robinson breaking in to baseball, breaking the color barrier. How all 30 Major League Baseball teams came to all wear the number 42 on April 15th. And right at the heart of it, and the genesis of it, was Ken Griffey Jr.
Jackie's such a big part of our family's history as far as, what he did was allowing us to go out there and play and have the freedom to go out there and play, to make choices. He didn't do what he did who's going to be the next Jackie Robinson, we don't know, or if it ever happened. But thank God that he did it. And, I was able to go out there and play. But I called Commissioner Selick and asked him, could I wear 42? And he said, hey, give me a minute, I'm going to call you back. And he called Rachel and then called me back the next day. He said, do you mind if everybody wears it? And I was like, absolutely not. The more the merrier. In 2007, that's when it started, and it's been that way ever since, and it's unbelievable to see. I look at it as something that I wanted to be selfish and do, but it turned into something much greater than I anticipated.
Hey, Ken, this is Mike Lynch up in Boston. Loved it when you came to town with Seattle. Your dad tortured us in the '75 World Series. It's great to actually have a chance to talk to you. When the labor negotiations and the lockout was going on, it got pushed into the first week in February. How much of a factor do you think that if we don't settle this thing, we're going to be locked out during the 75th anniversary of Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier? Do you think that had any push on both sides to get it done so the players could be on the field by April 15th?
I think that helps because you definitely didn't want to go into, the first celebration of the year in a lockout. And I think, both sides were motivated to get something done, and thank God that they did, so we don't have to talk about it. And, they're going to be playing baseball for quite a few years after this. I try to stay out of labor negotiations. One of the things that I said is, not being a player, is that, hey, I just want to celebrate the guys that allowed me to go out there and play freely as I did. And, Jackie was a big part of it. Growing up, the conversations at dinner table of certain things that he went through that I couldn't imagine going through. So those were some of the difficult conversations as a preteen that you learn about what that man has gone through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I liked what you said earlier about how without Jackie there, you couldn't have played baseball, how he paved the way for black players. Looking at the stats now, in the 1970s, black baseball players made up about a fifth, 20% of the MLB. That number has now dropped to about 8% today. The Mariners actually have the most black players on their team as of 2020, which was about 10 players. Why do you think this is? Why do you think the number of black players or the proportion of black players is declining in MLB?
I think that you look at other sports, the celebration, being able to be unique, where baseball, if you're unique, you're a problem. And I think that stigma has to go away. I look at certain ball players because of how they play the game, not because of the color of their skin. We have to get away from that. Black ball players, Latin ball players, we like to celebrate. And it's not that we are trying to show somebody up, but it's just a celebration of what we've done. Mm-hmm. And I think, the public has to understand that there's a difference between being enthusiastic and degrading your opponent. We who have played the game, we understand the difference. We understand the magnitude of the situation when you can and can't do something. You're down by 15 runs and you hit a home run and you walk it off. That's not the time that you do something like that. But if it's, a game winner or something like that, then that's fine. We have to teach the next generation of ball players how to play the game.
So let me understand correctly. The inability to express yourself on the field is preventing or keeping black players from rising in the ranks of MLB or even entering the sport?
No, I think, with you look at football, you get drafted, you're in the NFL. You look at basketball, you get drafted, you're in the NBA. You look at baseball, you get drafted, where do you go? The minor leagues. And baseball is an expensive sport. Basketball, you need basketball. Football, you need football. Baseball, you got travel ball. You got to be seen. High school baseball isn't really that popular. More of your summer ball travel teams. But in football, you play every Friday, and somebody's going to come see you. Basketball, you have a couple tournaments during the course of the year. Somebody's going to be seen. There'll be 300 coaches at a basketball tournament. You're going to get a scholarship. You look at scholarship problems. What is it, 11.7% for baseball? That's how many scholarships they offer, but football and basketball are full rides. So there's a number of factors that go on why baseball isn't as popular. But being able to express yourself and celebrate is in there also.
Ken, you were only 3 when Jackie Robinson died in 1972, but I'm sure your dad crossed paths with him a number of times. Any stories you recall your dad passing along about his interaction with Jackie Robinson?
My dad was in the minor leagues until, I think so. We've never really had that conversation. It's just the stories of other players who have played with him. You know, a guy named Joe Black, who was a teammate of his, who is like, you know, that every black ball player that came into the league, he made sure that he had a conversation with and made sure that we were aware of the history of, you know, black ball players, you know, from the barnstorming to you know, Jackie making the death threats. He made sure that we were all aware of all those things. So it wasn't really my dad who had conversations with him. It was more a teammate of his, Joe Black, who had those conversations, and I was able to have those conversations with Joe.
Right. I know that you are also working with Capital One to donate money to the Jackie Robinson Foundation for this season. Can you tell us a little bit about this initiative?
Well, it's a match made in heaven. You have Capital One who wants to give back, and you have the Jackie Robinson Foundation in the 75th year, who want to help kids achieve their goal. You know, the great thing about Capital One is, you know, their card holders are going to get great things. You know, they're going to be able to get stuff early. You know, whether that's tickets to the All-Star game, postseason, concerts, they're going to be able to get a lot of things that are going to go out first, and that's going to help the foundation. Also, when I talk about giving back, for every hit, game-winning hit, they're giving $1,000. And last year, I think it was over $250,000. Hopefully, you know, we can get more, you know, more hits, game-winning hits, whether walk-off hits. So hopefully we can raise more money and let these kids get a chance to live out their goals, as a lot of us have.
And there's a guarantee here of what, $250,000 minimum? Is that right?
Yep, there's a guarantee.
Pretty cool.
So it's going to be fun. You know, you're going to start rooting for teams that you normally wouldn't root for, because you know that the money's going to go to getting kids to achieve their goals.
You want to talk about something cool? I don't know if people remember this, but I remember you actually got to play with your dad, and you both hit a home run in the same game. Is that right? 1990?
Yes. He hit his first, and he shook my hand, and he goes, "That's how you do it, son."
Hey, Dad, I got 600. I'm going to get 630 of these.
You know, and I just look back, and the great thing about having a dad is that played is that you just looked at him going, you know, that's my dad out there. And so I hit mine, and he made me shake everybody's hand before he shook my hand.
Really?
And I wanted to shake his first, and he stood in the back of the line, and I shook everybody's hand, and I sat next to him, and not knowing the magnitude of the situation, because I'm 20 years old, I'm in the game, and him being 40, looking at it in a whole different light. Mm-hmm. You know, he's looking at it as, you know, we just made history. I'm looking at it like we need to win this game. And it didn't actually hit me until I passed Frank Robinson on the home run chart, and I was rounding the bases, and that's when it hit me. I go, now I understand what my dad felt like in 1990. It was the only time that I've ever felt that way, you know, running the bases, of like, wow, I understand it now. Yeah. And, you know, the dad, you know, you hear this story, you'll understand it later. Right now, you don't understand when a dad tells you something. Well, that was one of those moments where I didn't understand until later. And when it finally happened, I understood it. But my dad was he was a teammate, and he wanted to make sure that I was treated as a teammate until we got home, and that's when he became dad again. At the ballpark, we were teammates. When we got home, he was back to being dad, and it was quite interesting because he stayed at my house, and usually it's the other way around. But I'm like, Dad, you're only here for 6 weeks. Stay at my house. My mom was there, so I got some pretty good food. Dad was real upset because he would ask for something and I would ask, and I would always get what I wanted. And he's like, he'd tell my mom, are you cooking for him or me? And she's like, well, that's my baby.
Wow.
That's always the case. A mom will always choose her son.
Yeah, my son's here at the house right now.
Right. I want to get a sense from you how you advise players who are coming out of, it wasn't shortened, but it was kind of disrupted season because of the lockout. You were in the middle of a monster season during the 1994 season and the subsequent strike, but the way you conducted yourself, clearly you were a favorite among fans in the league as well. A lot of people say that you helped restore MLB's image after the 1994 labor dispute. How would you advise players to move forward with some of the, after the strife of the last couple of months?
Just be yourself. Just be you. The business side of sports can be somewhat ugly sometimes, but you don't have to be ugly. Just go out there. If you smile, you smile. Don't change who you are because of a business decision. I love baseball. I go out there every day. If I could go out there right now, I would. But being 52, I'm like, maybe once a week.
It goes one hamstring.
Yeah, maybe once a week. That's the best. But, I still watch it. I still root for guys. Just go out there and be you. It's not about how many autographs somebody signed. It's not about there. When somebody, a fan says hi, you can say hi back. It don't cost nothing to say hi.
Do you wish more players had that thing, say hi to a fan, like just tip your cap, even if you don't have time to sign an autograph, just smile and wink or wave?
I've had a full conversation while I was at the plate one time. But it was an ex-teammate's wife who said hi to me, and I said, "Hey, how you doing? How's the family? How's everything?" And she's looking at me going, "He's having a conversation with me." I end up hitting a home run at the bat, but we won't talk about that. But I feel that fans are there to enjoy the game. They every now and then you get the rowdy fan, but for the most part, people are out there wanting you to do well and wanting to see a good game. And I think that, for me, being 19 helped because I was a kid and they were like, well, we can't really yell at them too much. I did have a guy in Boston, by the way, buy tickets behind home plate, the on-deck circle, and in center field. And, after year 2, when I was at home plate, when I went to hit, he'd be there. When I go to the outfield, he'd be there. And, I think it was year 2, maybe year 3, I finally turned around and was like, hello? He was like, that's all I wanted. I go, what do you mean? I thought that you had a twin. Y'all were just messing with me. He was like, no, I just wanted you to say hi to me. That's it. I was like, and I started laughing. But, like I said, most of the people that come to the ballpark want to have a good time and enjoy the game. But there are some people that, push it to the limit.
Yeah.
But, we just have to, there's not that many of those. We just have to celebrate the ones that want to come out there and watch the game that they love. I mean, because I tell people all the time, I'm not going to spend money on something that I don't want to watch. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to go yell at somebody, that's not enjoyable for me. I want to go out there and watch these guys perform at the highest level.
You're not playing right now, but you're still on the Reds' payroll. Lynchy, this is something that Bobby Bonilla knows something about, isn't it?
No. See, that's not really that. See, those are misinformed numbers.
Okay, please clarify.
That money was already set aside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, defer it, yeah.
And when I deferred my compensation, it was already deferred. And now I'm just getting it now. But it was already
smart
put there. It wasn't like the Bobby Bonilla all right, we'll give you, you're making 1 point whatever, and all of a sudden it turns into 30. That money was already over there.
Final question for me, Ken. When you think of Jackie Roosevelt Robinson, one word. Give me one word when you think of him.
Hero, that guy, but I can't,
Yeah.
The man. Even though there are two words in there, you can't really describe, father, husband.
They all fit.
Yeah. There's a list. I mean, the things, like I said, if it wasn't for him, who would it be? Mm-hmm. Would it be after my dad playing? There may not be a Ken Griffey Sr. and Ken Griffey Jr. playing, but he did it so we can go out there and play. And I don't have to deal with the tone that he had to deal with back in 47.
Yeah.
I don't have to deal with that in 1989. And it's going to continue to get better where my kids don't have to hear it. Their kids don't have to hear it because he brought a country together, and every sport benefited because of him.
Yeah.
Every part of life benefited because people stopped looking at the color of people's skin and look at what this person brought to the table.
And that's why Jackie Robinson Day, April 15th, is going to be celebrated across MLB and across sports overall. 75th anniversary of Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier.
Yes, but it's bigger than like you said, it's bigger than baseball. It's life. It's what this man did for every single one of us. To be able to say, hey, we may be different, but we can get along, and we have a common goal.
Right.
And that's whatever that common goal is, whether it's sports or business, cooking, whatever it is, art. We may look different, but we have a goal. And he allowed all of us to finally look at each and every one of us in a way that we're supposed to be looked at.
Ken, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your joining us and reflecting on Jackie Robinson with us.
Thank you.
Such an honor.
Thanks, Ken. That was awesome.
That had to be a treat, talking to Ken Griffey Jr., especially about Jackie Robinson Day, Lynchy.
Yeah, it was. And I never knew that he was the one that went to Commissioner Bud Selig to ask if he could wear number 42 on April 15th. Bud Selig said to him, let me get back to you. And Selig came back and said, would you mind if everybody in baseball wore number 42? And Ken says, no, the more the merrier. I thought that was great. I never knew that Ken Griffey Jr. was behind that move. That was a great move, and obviously, it'll never be worn by any Major League Baseball player again. I think Mariano Rivera was the last one to wear 42. It's on it's a retired number at every single ballpark around Major League Baseball, and the reverence that Ken Griffey Jr. had and still has for Jackie Robinson is just so impressive, and he got that from his dad. It's passed down, and Ken is now passing it down to his children as well. And just think of how many opportunities doors have been opened for what Jackie Robinson did. And Jackie Robinson had to endure to be able to do it for so many young African Americans to play this great game. But we need to get more. 8% is not a satisfactory number. And what Ken had to say kind of made sense, that you play basketball in college, you get drafted, you go right to the NBA and you play. You play football in college, you get drafted by the NFL, and you instantly are in the big leagues. Baseball, you get drafted or you sign, you go play in the minor leagues from anywhere from 1 to 8 or 9 years if you hang in there that long. And that's one of the big reasons that it's not that attractive, because there isn't the instant gratification that you have in sports like basketball and the NBA and football with the National Football League. So those are pretty good points that he brought up that I took away from that conversation.
And speaking of that, bringing that up, right now there is a fight going on in court right now with Major League Baseball and the minor league teams. The minor leaguers are saying these are poverty wages. Major League Baseball, on the other hand, is saying, hey, you're playing to reach a dream, and you could have gotten into any other line of work, but this is what you wanted. That's an interesting take on that.
It's a pretty good way to make a living. We've all been around Major League ballparks and spring training camps, and you watch what these guys do, and it beats an awful lot of other ways to make a living.
By the way, if you haven't had a chance, watch 42, the movie. It came out, Chadwick Boseman, the great actor, late great actor, playing Jackie Robinson. Just excellent on what Jackie Robinson had to go through during his lifetime and it was very enlightening. In fact, that was one of the few movies the lights came up and the audience applauded. I remember that well.
A great one. Absolutely. A great movie.
Speaking of great ones and great movies, this needs to be on film. Time now for the number of the week now, because Scarlet isn't here. It's Lynchy's already on stage. So we're going to play the game, put them in order, and give me the number. So you're playing for a car, man. This is,
Okay.
Now, I didn't just pick any old season. I picked the 1960 home run leaders. Now, there were 5 that I'm going to mention right now, and not in any order. Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris, Ernie Banks, Hank Aaron, Eddie Matthews.
I used to use an Eddie Matthews bat in Little League.
I want see how close you get, 1 to 5, naming the 1960 home run leaders.
I'm going to go, since you asked this, the obvious answer would be Hank Aaron. But since you asked this, it has to be somebody that's other than Hank Aaron. And who would the odd one be? So I'm going to go, let's see, I wrote them down here. I'm going to go EB, Ernie Banks, number 1. I'm going to go Mickey, number 2. I'm going to go Hank, number 3. Maris hit 61 and 61. He didn't hit it in 60, but he was pretty hot. So I'm going to go Maris 4 and Eddie Matthews 5. So I get Banks, Mantle, Aaron, Maris, Matthews.
Know what? I got to give it to you. You got it.
Really?
Yes. Here's the deal. Ernie Banks hit 41. And by the way, you used the logic, and I'm thinking, oh. Dang! He was right. Ernie Banks hit 41. Hank Aaron and Mickey Mantle each hit 40 home runs. Roger Maris and Eddie Matthews hit 39 home runs, all in the 1960 season.
Huh.
You nailed it.
Where was like Harmon Killebrew and Willie Mays in that group?
That's a good question. They got to be in the top 10.
Yeah.
Especially Killebrew, man. That guy, he was one of the first ones to knock one out of the old Tiger Stadium. And I'm like, oh, my goodness gracious, man. It was something else.
Well, if you didn't give me the names of the top 5, I might not have. But I would have given you Aaron, Mays, Mantle, Banks, and some. But I remember that this was an odd year for a shortstop to lead the majors in home runs.
Well, I wanted to be fair.
I know you did. But I got inside, Michael. I got inside your head and said, what? He says, I bet Lynch is going to say the obvious answer will be Hammer and Hank Aaron.
This is why I will never play poker with you. This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports show. Oh, by the way, you won a car. Thanks for the Yugo.
Yeah, 68 Dodge Dart.
Actually, those swingers, man, were great, man.
Yeah,
I love
six
those.
engine, yeah.
We are here each and every week at the same time, plus online wherever you get your podcasts. You can catch those Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. I'm Michael Barr on Twitter at Big Bar Sports.
Scarlet, hurry back, will you please? I'm Mike Lynch. Follow me at Lynchy WCVB.
And by the way, you can follow Scarlet on Twitter at Scarlet Foo. Thanks for joining us. Tune in again next week for the latest on the stories moving big money in the world of sports. You're listening to Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.